I think I'm on. Good evening, good evening. Please forgive my tardiness this evening. This is Uche and Njoku. Welcome to Family Talk with the Njokus. It is Thursday night, February 18th, 2021. And what am I doing here? And unfortunately, my evening started off with some technical difficulties, so I had to shut down everything and reboot the system because I didn't have any lights. Kind of hard to have a show without lights because without lights it would look something like this. And this is what I was working with, and I was like, okay, what's wrong with my lights here? So for whatever reason, my Stream Deck wasn't talking to my Elgato lights, so I had no lights. But it's said in the word, "Let there be light," and here we are. So again, welcome those of you who are here, those of you who will be here, those of you who might not be here. Either way, I welcome you to the space. I thank you for being here. It's much appreciated. I know that my my choice to have this be at 10:30 p.m. on a Thursday night to talk to families and talk about family matters is kind of super late. In my household, it's very late. But nonetheless, it's something that's very important. So I definitely want to thank you for permitting me to come into your space. Um, and again, I want to also say that I do apologize for not being here last week. If those of you who have been privy to or have had an opportunity to watch this past Saturday's podcast, the Sneaker Principle podcast, what happens at 10 o'clock on Saturdays, I talked about how I had reached a dip, a space where I was kind of like just completely disconnected, um, and maybe a little bit overwhelmed. A lot of things were going on, and then just the commitment I had made to putting out content on a consistent basis had started to wear on me. And you call that the dip, where you've committed to doing something on a consistent basis, and all of a sudden, everything that can go wrong starts to happen wrong, starts to go wrong, or maybe nothing might go wrong. It might just be the energy that you need to sustain yourself starts to wane, and that's what was happening. And I recognized that as the dip. Um, and thankfully, I read a book by Seth Godin, who is an amazing business mind and amazing marketing genius, who talked about the dip in his book titled "The Dip." So having read that book and realized this is what I was going through, I realized I need to take just a little bit of time to step away to reevaluate and re-energize. Because for those of you who've been following me, I was pretty much putting I think 5 pieces of content at one point in time live on a weekly basis. I had sneakers. I was doing short format sneaker reviews. I was doing those live. I had a uh, tech episodes that I was doing on Monday nights to review technology that teachers can use in the classrooms. I was doing that on Monday nights actually. Then then I had sneakers on Tuesdays. Then I had Wednesday was financial literacy, and which I actually missed this week. So it's been two Wednesdays that I missed that, which I will be getting back onto the groove of things next week with that. Then Thursdays is family talk. Fridays for me to kind of like tie up loose ends, and then Saturdays I had the podcast. Then Sundays I had the restream of the podcast. So it was just really busy, and at the same time being a principal, being a father, being a husband. It was a lot. And then with the pandemic and everything, it was just a lot of things going on at the same time. But however, the dip is real, and those of you might not have a name, like some people might say it's depression, some people might say I'm overwhelmed, but for me, it was just the commitment I had made. I had reached a dip, that low point where I was like, okay, you know, what's trying to find the energy to do what I've been doing, but nonetheless, I recognize it, and I'm not out of the dip. I'm still in the dip. The dip is a space that I'm going to be in probably for a little bit of while as I'm reworking things, and right now I am reworking things. this space that I'm in right now, as far as family talk, is going to continue. Um, I might shift the time. That's something I'm looking at because it is kind of late, but it might stay at the same time because this might be the most opportune time for me with balancing everything else. Um, but the content matter is something that I'm working on because this space started a space for me to talk to you about um, um, issues and matters dealing with the family. Now, from the perspective as an educator, as a principal, someone who literally deals with families. Then at one point in time, I had my sister joining me, who is a clinical um, a mental health worker. She's a nurse practitioner. She has her own practice in Wichita, Kansas, and she had a couple episodes in here with me. But then her business, she has a new practice, started to take off, and then there's some issues that she needs to deal with herself personally. And we're talking about a woman who works 8 to 8 days. I mean, when I'm talking about she works 8 to 8, she's up before the sun. She keeps going well after the sun has gone down. So so I was like, it says you need to just focus on what you need to focus on, and whenever you can come on, come on. But it's interesting because um, her not being here, along with other things that have been happening, I start to realize what the conversations that I'm engaging in with you needs to needs to be better focused on. And and the thing that has been shining brightly, as far as a matter that that I feel like I might be not necessarily best equipped to concentrate on, but something that I'm becoming I'm becoming much more passionate about, and that has to do with financial literacy. And I know people keep hearing this; it's like a buzzword right now: financial literacy, financial literacy, financial literacy. But it is something that I'm recognizing that is a major problem, especially within the black family. And I'm going to start calling this out, you know. And and the reality is this: um, there is we're right now we're talking about you know for a while we're talking about for not for a while the fight has been equality, you know, equality, equality, equality. We need to create all equal spaces for for our in our community. We need to create spaces where we are we have civil rights and equal access. Then equity became the has become the main the modified focus, and it's right. It's wanted to be equal, but you don't have equal access. If the accessibility is not equitable, then there's an issue there, and that's been the talk about in with job, with opportunity, with education. This whole notion of equal access is equity space. But something has bothered me about that. You know, yes, equality is important, equity is essential, but what is it exactly in society that is glaringly just clearly in our faces is the point of focus that we need to take in, that we need to make sure that we're honing in on. What is the common denominator across the board that regardless, and I would say this, regardless whether you're black, brown, you're a minority, you're poor, or maybe not poor, but you might not have that equal access. What's the one common issue across the board? And I have to say this: it's money, it's finances. You know, we can. I mean, in the black community, it could be said, yes, within the black community, we're not monolithic. We're not homogeneous. We're There are different reflections within the black community, whether it's your economic status, your cultural background, if you're Afro Latino, if you're African, if you're African American, if you are light skinned, dark skinned, from the north, from the south, wherever you may be from. But the one common problem across the board is your money, is your finances. Because if your money is not right, if your finances is not right, if you're not able to to economically participate in society, then equity doesn't matter. I'm sorry, equality doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you can't even afford to be part of the conversation. And some of you might be like, "What are you talking about?" But and and let me do this. I want because I'm the best way for me to explain this is by by storytelling. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story real quick, and maybe this might be me revisiting something I've already said before, but it might be something that needs to be repeated again. So for those of you who are keen and you see my name Uche Njoku, or if you Google me Uche Chuku Njoku, clearly I am, that's the name that my parents gave me. So if that's the name my parents gave me, then clearly I am not African American in the sense of being a born um, American who's black, who's been in this country for however long. Okay, um, I'm an immigrant. My parents came here with me when I was how old was I? The first time we came here, I was about 7 years old. I wasn't quite 8. I was 7 years old. So I'm coming here from another country, from another space, and I came in here and had to assimilate and become part of America. And the part of America that I became part of was Black America because of my skin tone and and um, and economic access. When we came to America, we first landed in Brooklyn. When my mother had family, we came here in the winter. And my mother was like, "Heck no, it is way too cold." And mind you, we were coming from at that point in time we were coming from Saudi Arabia, but my father had just finished his education in Saudi Arabia, and that's a desert. It's hot. All of a sudden we are in winter in New York City and Brooklyn. My mom said that was not going to happen, and we ended up taking one more flight to California, where she had two brothers who were living in California. So we ended up in Los Angeles, and when we ended up in Los Angeles with our economic access, and the I have to say economic access because that's number one thing. Without economic access, then you have to figure out where you fit. And if you don't have enough money, then guess what? You fit in where people most look like you. And our first landing space where we actually lived and said, okay, this is what we're going to call home for now, was Jordan Downs Projects in Watts. Um, and that's where our American story began. Then from there, it was South Central LA, Budlong. I went to Budlong Elementary School, and that was our space. We were poor. We were trying to make ends meet. My father was recently graduated from Abdulaziz University in Saudi Arabia. He had 2 degrees, a degree in law and a degree in sociology. And the only job he can get at that point in time, this is 1982, 1983, was I remember he was stacking tapes, at Blockbuster. For those of you who remember Blockbuster, he was mopping floors at Jack in the Box. And I know he worked at one point in time at Burger King. That is what a black man who's college educated, who went on a full ride from Africa to Saudi Arabia, who speaks multiple languages, and reads and writes Arabic fluently. Actually learned Arabic and reading and writing it when he doing his first 2 years in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so a man who learns all that and is educated comes to America, and the first thing and the only access he has, is the most meaningful of jobs. My mother, who at the point in time when we lived in Saudi Arabia, who's working as personal secretary to the Nigerian ambassador to Saudi Arabia. For anybody who understands, in Africa, the two most powerful, at least in Nigeria, the two most powerful foreign posts is America, and I'm sorry, 3: America, Britain, and Saudi. Why Saudi? Why Saudi Arabia? Because Saudi Arabia is where you found Mecca, and half of Nigeria's population are Muslim. So if you are stationed there as as the ambassador, that's a very powerful position, because that's a relationship there between a country that is half Muslim and the home of Islam. So my mother was secretary of Nigerian ambassador. So you can only imagine the lifestyle we had living in Saudi, But then when the time came for my father to say, okay, I need to find my stake in the world and find my place in this world, he chose to come to America. I think like a lot of people have done over generations. America, land of opportunity, land of equal rights. Statue of Liberty says, bring your cold, your hot, your dark, your light skin, your hungry, your huddled masses, come to America. Here is the land of opportunity. And that's what my father did. He bought myself, my mother. At that point in time, it was me, two sisters, and my brother was still in my mama's stomach, in her womb. So we arrived here. And with that degree, the best he can do was those jobs that I told you: mopping floors, flipping burgers, and stacking tapes at Blockbuster. And it's funny because somebody could say it was racial. Yes, it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was racial. He was an African man here. I mean, how many of you guys have ever been in a New York City cab, or if you're not from New York City, you've been somewhere around this country, and the person who's serving you or helping you or whatever the case is, you ask them where they're from, and they'll tell you, "Oh, I'm from this other country," and oh, wow, what is it like in that country? It's like X, Y, Z. So what brought you to America? Opportunity. So what do you used to do in your former country? And you hear incredible stories, lawyers and doctors and people who are super educated, but they come here and then the access is not there. The economic access is not there, and other things fall into play. But excuse me, I'm over here licking my lips like LL Cool J. Okay, so now they're here. My family was here, and no matter what my parents could do, they just couldn't find a way to make grounds financially. And yes, I'm not going to deny the fact that there were a lot of factors that played into it. My father being African, his accent and everything else, even though he spoke impeccable English, even though he speaks multiple languages, not just African language, but also European languages and Arabic fluently. That didn't matter. He didn't have access, and he wasn't given economic access. And as a result, I ended up shifting from a life where we were, you know, a diplomat family. My mother worked for the Nigerian, was personal secretary to the Nigerian ambassador. My father was a student in Saudi Arabia on a full scholarship. We lived in like amazing housing and everything else. Had cars. We had, house help and everything else. And we here in America, we're in the projects, and my father's trying to figure out how to access this American dream. And what ended up happening was those jobs never came. His pride and his sense of identity was crushed. My family, my mother, my siblings, we paid for it, and this is a very similar story to a lot of people, and we just never found my family just never found that financial foothold, could never get the right jobs or the right opportunities. But then beyond that, my parents were not educated to the economic systems of America. The only thing they were educated to was this: get a job, work very hard. If you have to get two jobs, you get two jobs. Okay, and you try to save as much money as possible. Those are the only educations they received. Okay, work hard, work multiple jobs. Work harder and save. If you're listening to this right now, I don't care if you're alive right now or you're it's a year from now and you came across this video. If you've ever heard any those rules, economic rules, work hard, work double jobs, do whatever you gotta do and save. Just help me not feel crazy, and a comment. What is your story around that? Is this a reality that you experienced? You can just type in yes. Work hard. This is what I was taught. Because this was what my parents were told about America, and then this is what they taught me and my siblings about America. You work hard. You work hard. You work multiple jobs, whatever you gotta do. You save, and that's what America is. Because at least in America, you could work. And that was, and then of course we go to school. You work hard there too, and that's what I did. That's what my siblings did. You know, um, and I took it to heart because here I am right now. A bachelor's degree and two master's degrees, and my last master's degree is from Columbia University, Ivy League Teachers College. It doesn't get any better than that. I have a sister who is a nurse practitioner. She has a master's degrees and she's going to be pursuing her doctorates and she has her own practice. It doesn't get any better than that. I have a sister who's a teacher, a brother who's finishing his degrees, and he's an educator as well. I have another sister who's a nurse, and she's working on her degree. That is what success in America was taught to us. Work hard. But the thing I've never understood is this. When I became an adult, I came into the real world, and I had my degrees and everything else. It was just weird because I just didn't understand. Like I was like, okay, I got the degrees, I did all that, but what's next? Okay, I got the job, but what's next? Because I see people doing things I just don't understand. I remember the first time I heard W-2. I was applying for a job, and I was like, what is that? And they were talking about withholdings, and I was like, what? And then I remember when they were talking about retirement plans and pensions, and I was like, what's that? They're like, oh no, just put this number in there. And I was like, what's that? And I was like a robot. Whatever I was told to do is what I did. And again, I worked hard and multiple times I had multiple jobs. And even with the degree, I couldn't make ends meet. And I still didn't understand, how is it possible? Because I did everything right. I got the degrees. I did all these different things. But now as an adult, after going through my making my mistakes, and mistakes that made me feel shameful, that broke me down mentally. And I'll tell you right now what the mistakes was. It's financial. By the time I was 26, 27, I had filed for bankruptcy. How is it possible at that age you're filing for bankruptcy? My credit was so shot that I couldn't even breathe. Just to look at a bank, they would laugh at me. It got to a point where I had treated banks the way I treated cell phones. Remember back in the day with a cell phone, where you could shut down one cell phone, go to another place and get another phone, or different shops to get different pagers. I'm dating myself talking about pagers. Like that was how I treated banks. Okay, when I had a credit card, what I did was I just ran it up, and I paid the minimum balance because that's what, what people say. Just pay the minimum balance. Just don't forget to pay the minimum balance. When I would get a car, and I'd walk in there and they were like, "Hey, no money down needed. Just sign here." And I'll be given the price of my monthly payments. And what would happen was I would just ask myself, can I make that work? Now, does this make sense? Is this financially smart? Am I being ripped off? It was just like, can I make that work? I know it's fine. I could talk about this now, because I'm on the other end of things. I remember when I was around the same time in that mid to late 20s, I bought my third car. I financed my third car. And it was, of course, I got education. I live in California. Listen, I gotta have a clean whip. In college, I drove a Hyundai S Coupe. It was a death trap. Probably one of the worst cars that was ever on the road. You drive that car and you felt like you were driving a car made of straight aluminum foil. Like you can feel the road vibrating around you. Like you felt like the bottom of that car was going to drop out at any given time. Then from that car, I got an Acura J30. I had stepped up. Then after that, I was like, I got to get a Mercedes. I'm African, Africans, we got to show out that Mercedes. And I got it would have been like in 1990. At this point in time, I would say it was like 1992. So I got like a 1997. So it was a Mercedes. It was a E-Class, a E300. And it was clean. But I didn't know about values of the car and depreciation. I didn't know I was being ripped off. It was a guy who had a lot with a little trailer in the middle of it. You know those car lots. And I walked in there and he told me how beautiful I would look in that car. So I was like, yes, I have to have this car. And the interest rate was probably something like over 25%, something insane. It was something insane. And I was making, and my payments would have been one of my paychecks every month. So I got paid twice a month, and one of my paychecks would have been that car note. And I jumped on it. What happened to that car? It got repossessed. I don't think I even made it a full year. I think I just barely made a year. No, it wasn't even a full year. It got repoed because I couldn't afford it. You know, I didn't know. You know, and yes, someone can say just pay your bills, but I didn't know. And somebody can say, well, your parents should have told you. My parents didn't know. You know how many cars got repossessed? How many of my father's cars got repossessed? We just didn't talk about it. The car was gone. We didn't talk about it. I mean, one time my father thought the car was stolen. They stole my car, and then he never said anything about it again. And later on, I realized, oh yeah, they took the car. You know, so this is a space that I grew up in, and the reality is this: a lot of people grew up in these spaces. Okay, some of you, if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you are extremely fortunate. But a lot of us grew up in these spaces where financially we're not taught, not even a little bit, how to live financially. Then our parents are victims of this. It doesn't matter if they're immigrants or if they were born and raised in this country and went through the educational system, they were never taught. You know, and it becomes this silent secret that we keep to ourselves. You know, we just keep it to ourselves. You know, and sometimes we pretend everything is wonderful. And how do we try to maintain that veneer of confidence financially? We get expensive stuff. You know, you get the fly car, you have the nice clothing, and your haircut is always clean. Everything is nice because you want to create the impression that you're financially good when you are not financially good. And y'all know what I'm talking about. Those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, then listen, you are blessed because you came up in a space and had people around you who taught you. And more likely it was a family member or maybe it was in your household where that was the failures had happened. So you had parents or family members who were like, no, we're gonna make sure that this family is on point. But that is such a rarity. Such a rarity. And this is no secret. I share this in my YouTube videos. I've done a lot of YouTube videos about credit. I've done YouTube videos about credit cards. And when I started making YouTube videos at the point where I was like, I need to document my journey towards fixing my credit. Because after that first bankruptcy, I found myself in the same position again. But this time the laws had changed. Because back then, I think it was chapter 13, bankruptcy. You can charge off everything. You have to do all this paperwork and do all this stuff. You go to court, you swear in, and they ask you a couple of questions, and the judge signs you off, and you walk away. And the only thing they can't charge off is your the only thing they can charge off for me was my student loans, and that's the one thing you cannot charge off in a bankruptcy. But everything else was wiped clean. But because I didn't have the financial wherewithal or the education, guess what happened? Within about 2.5 years, I was back in that same hole again. Eventually, after years of going back and forth with different spaces and making deals with people I owed and using credit repair companies, all these different things, and nothing was working because the reality was the issue was not the issue was really in me. Okay, I need to understand, how do I fix this? How do I live financially? And I documented that. My journey, the things that I did, the things I was learning, and I mean, it's funny because YouTube was a big part of it. Watching different people explain how things work. I remember the first time I learned what FICO was, what your credit score was. I just knew it was a credit score. I didn't know what it was. And it's funny how many people don't know what that even means. And I figured that out. I was like, oh snap! So this is how my credit is being monitored. So when people were telling me cash is king, I don't mess with credit. No, what they were saying is that I can't because I don't have access to it. But my stuff is so jacked up. And once I figured that out and I learned that, the one question that was glaring consistently in my mind, and has been glaring for years, is how come we don't teach this in school? People could say, no, this is what you need to learn at home. But if my parents didn't learn this in school, my parents didn't go to school here, so they have a little bit of a break. But it wasn't like the church we went to. We stayed going to church when we came to America. We stayed going to church. There wasn't even a workshop at church that says, "Hey, let's teach our congregation financial literacy." You know, and so going back to school. So if you grew up here and you didn't have it, and your financials is screwed up, there's a good chance that your parents' financials was screwed up, and maybe their grandparents' financials was screwed up, and then guess what? Your children's finances are gonna be screwed up too because they don't have access to knowledge. And these are the things that I'm like, we need to figure out and fix. We need to educate or educate not only ourselves but our children because that's the only going to break the financial the crisis that no one's talking about. I'll tell you this right now. For me, I think if I had had true financial literacy, understanding the financial systems of this country, I probably would be in a very different place that I am right now. I'm very grateful to God and His grace that I'm even where I'm at right now. But I probably would be much further along because knowledge is power, and the reality is this: the knowledge that you're not being taught disempowers you, and that's the thing that's been really, you know, eating at me, especially most recently. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have been paying attention. If you don't know what I'm talking about right now, I don't know where you've been. But if you don't know what Reddit is, you don't know who Wall Street Bets is, and you don't know GameStop, you know, and short selling and all the crazy things that's happened from the month of December till through now. In the news, it's just funny. I don't know where I was. I think this pandemic brain. So my focus has been on certain things, and I've not been paying attention to like the financial markets. And I remember I heard about the fact that all of a sudden people were pushing up and writing up GameStop stock. So for those of you who don't know about the company GameStop, they're a video game retailer. This is how I knew them. When I had my PlayStation, I had my Xbox. Um, During my financially responsible days, I had both systems in the house. I would go to GameStop to get my games. Um, and of course, now we live in a world where you download the games. And so if you're going to GameStop, it's usually because you're getting older games that you can't download, or you have games you want to sell, or however the case. You can still buy games. But that space is changing, and the company has struggled, to my understanding, with making that transition because their key business was literally pulled out from under them because the people who were making the consoles were now saying you can download it directly from us. And they were there. This is a company that was described as heading towards bankruptcy, heading towards being reorganized and becoming smaller and closing stores down. And a bunch of quote unquote regular people, and that's debatable, but a bunch of people on a forum group on Reddit called Wall Street Bets decided that, hey, first of all, Wall Street Bets, because that space is what their main focus of conversation is, investments in Wall Street and everything else, and they decided that they didn't like what was happening with GameStop because their stock was being shorted, and they knew who was shorting the stock. They knew, and what that means is that the stocks were being these stocks from the company were being bought at a high price, whatever the high price was, and then being resold back, So I'm sorry, yeah, these stocks were being sold out at a high price, and they were waiting for the price to drop so they can now buy back the lower cost price, and then keep the difference. And this is called short selling, and it sounds more complicated than it really is. It's very simple. It's just like, hey, I will borrow something from somebody, sell it to you, and buy it back from you, and I give it back to them, and I got a profit from it, And they saw this, they didn't like it, and they used social media to literally round up an army of people to invest in and buy stock from Wall Street, from GameStop. And what did that do? Simple concept of supply and demand. If people start buying something and they keep buying it, and there's such a demand for it, what happens? The price goes up. So they push the price up and screwed over the hedge funds who were trying to short the stock to make a crazy amount of money. And for those of you who are super confused, I was confused about this when I first heard it. Put it like this: what these people did made a lot of money for them. For example, one person, I think and you can look this up. His name is his social media name is Roaring Kitty, like a lion roaring kitty. I think he put in $50,000, and within weeks of this whole thing happening, between December and the beginning of this year, his $50,000 turned into $20 million plus. You're like, how's that possible? Because there's rules to this. There's a space here that we're not educated on, and a lot of people made a lot of money, but then also at the same time, a lot of people got excited about it and jumped in, and didn't understand what was happening. And by the time they jumped in, the arc of the stock going up was starting to fall. So a lot of people lost money. A lot of people made money. A lot of people lost money. A lot of people broke even. A lot of people were greedy. All of these things were happening in this space. And so right now, this whole entire thing ended up costing the hedge fund company, the Wall Street guys, the people who are on Wall Street, the hedge funders, lost $70 billion. That's the number that I saw. Crazy. And I'm like, 70 billion. There are countries out there whose GDP don't even barely get to a billion. There are countries on this planet whose GDP, the gross national, their gross domestic product doesn't even hit a billion. And through this one stock and what was happening around this $70 billion, some of these hedge funders had to go bankrupt over a piece of knowledge that these people, I would say young people in this space, and I know it's a mixture of people, had, that literally made some people millionaires overnight, destroyed some other people who didn't know what they were getting themselves into, and the people who knew, the people who were trying to make the money on Wall Street, lost. As a result, this morning on and if you turn the TV on, I'm sure you saw it on the news, on MSNBC, on Fox, on CNN. There was a trial, not a trial. It was a hearing, the GameStop hearing. So you had the CEOs of Robinhood and Citadel and Melvin. Is it Melvin? I might be wrong about that. Melvin Financial. All these people were there being interrogated by Congress, by the Finance Committee, trying to figure out what went wrong. And I'm sitting there watching this. I'm like, this is so interesting, because all of a sudden, people are losing their minds about how it's possible for these nobodies, dumb money. I think that's how they refer to it, dumb money, the non-experts, to manipulate the market and make so much money legally. And I just trying to figure out how to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I'm watching this, and the Finance Committee, there were three members who are two black men and one black woman, Maxine Waters, who's a congresswoman from the state of California. I know because I actually received a scholarship from her from when I was in high school to go to college. I think I got like $1,000 scholarship. And they're here talking to these people about what went wrong and what do we need to do. And those other congressmen people in there, and they're having these conversations. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you're here saying that you want to protect people who lost everything. You're here saying, like, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again? People don't treat the stock market like a game. And I'm asking, how come the general public are not being educated on this? How come you go to a high school campus, you could take calculus, you could take advanced placement calculus, you could take German, you could take Russian, you could take, good schools have incredible curriculum. Even not so great schools still have the standard, algebra, pre-algebra, algebra 2, trigonometry, U.S. history, all these subjects, biology, chemistry, physics. But there is nowhere that I'm aware of where it is standardized by the state that every high school student has 4 years of financial or economic literacy, understanding the stock market, understanding banking, understanding personal finance, understanding insurance. And the thing is this, somebody might say, well, they're too young. They wouldn't understand it. Okay. Have you taken a physics class before? I took physics and I took chemistry. I took them both my senior year in high school. And that was complicated. That was complicated. Understanding periodic tables and trying to understand the non-metals and the metals, or taking physics and you're trying to truly understand um, Einstein's theory of relativity. You're trying to break that down. Was that Einstein? Or was that Newton? You know, like you're sitting here trying to understand these extreme concepts. But you can't tell me that the stock market cannot be explained to students? Like understanding insurance, you know, whole life and term cannot be grasped by young people who will very soon go into the real world. And these are things that they need to understand because these are things they should have. The whole notion of a portfolio, the only time the word portfolio I've ever heard being used in schools is because you're doing a project or you have a class that's portfolio based, and you have to have evidence of the work that you're doing to show your progress through the work. But financial portfolios, understanding like, you know, what should be in there, understanding loans. How many people go to college because we're being told college is the key, but you get out of college and you spend a good chunk of your life giving your money, literally living under the poverty level with a good job, just trying to pay off your student loans. Or if you're unfortunate enough to actually get, if you're not fortunate enough, if you're not fortunate enough to get a good job, then you're just trying to make ends meet, and that student loan is there. It's not going nowhere. And in some cases, I know people who have had to move back home just because of the student loans. So you get the loans, so you can get an education, then you come back out and you're living at the same level as somebody who doesn't have who doesn't have that same education that you have. Like these spaces, like understanding like the whole concept of loans and what colleges to go to, maybe the Ivy League school that's being touted, or that, you know, high level university that is known because it's a Notre Dame or it's a Michigan State or whatever school level is. And I'm not trying. And listen, I went to one of those schools. My undergrad was at the University of Rochester, super expensive. But I'll be honest with you, if I knew then what I know now, I would not have gone to University of Rochester. And I know what I would have missed out on. I know I would have missed out on an amazing experience because it was an amazing experience. But I would have kept my butt at home, gone to community college, because back then in the state of California, if you went to a community college in the state of California, it was $13 a credit. Something no one ever said to me. No one ever said that to me. I was just told if you go to community college, you're showing that maybe you were not prepared for college. Maybe you didn't have the grades to be in college, and that was something that I fell for. You know, in California, literally it was $13 a credit. And how did I find out? Because the summer after I got into college, my father told me you have to do two things: either get a job or be in school. Or be in school. My father was like, "No, you're gonna be in school because I don't want you working until you're done with that degree." So I went to Los Angeles Southwest Community College, and I remember sitting there and thinking like, who's going to pay for this? Because my father and my parents were always struggling financially. So he took me to the campus. I took Psych 101. I remember being in line to register. He was there with me, and I was confused because when they said the cost of that class, but it was 4 credits, and I was like, and it was $13 a credit. I remember hearing that number, and I was like, it was like $60, $70 or something like that with fees. It was like $60, $70 for that class, and I was like, wait a minute, that can't be right. Because in University of Rochester, my tuition alone was like $30-something thousand. Then when you added room and board, it was like $42,000. And I was like, how is it this much cheaper? But then I told myself, you know what? But I'm at the University of Rochester. Popping my collar. I'm at the University of Rochester. One of the new IVs, ranked top 50 schools in the country. Yeah, I ended up with top 50 debt. Again, that conversation was never had. The economic impact of what school you choose and how it can impact the rest of your life was never done. And for a lot of people out there who are college educated, let me tell you something. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about. It is one of the worst kept secrets of the bondage that you're in because of those student loans. A lot of us have said this. If I knew then, I would have not done it that way. I would have not done it that way. I'd have kept my butt at home. I'd have commuted, or I'd have gone to a state school, or I would have worked for a year, or I would have joined the military. I would have done something other than just jumping into these spaces. And unfortunately, a lot of black folk, this is what happens. We get caught up in the emotions and the excitement of being the first to go to college. And then we find out we end up being not the last to be in debt. Like, think about that, because college is supposed to give you a different opportunity, a different access to a different life. But then you realize after you're done, yes, you have a better job. Yes, you have a little bit more access, but financially, you're no better off than somebody who didn't go to college. You know, and yes, as you pay it off and you move on, you move into your space educationally, and I'm sorry, professionally. Yes, you will. You might be. I won't say you will. You might be able to climb out and get to a higher level. And I tell people all the time, I feel extremely fortunate to be a high school principal in New York City, because I went to college. I majored in biomedical engineering, and I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. And I ended up majoring in film because I thought it was like the best courses I took, or my film classes. I did really well in them, and I was actually passionate about it. But at the same time, I didn't get any guidance about what are you going to do with that film degree. Are you actually going to work in Hollywood and be a filmmaker or work in film? And after college, I did intern. I did try my hand at being a production assistant, and I realized you don't get paid and you're not eating, and I didn't get a job, and I literally walked away from that space. I had a degree that was at that moment in time was worthless. My degree did not equate a job. Okay, my experience and my attitude and my ability to sell myself was got me into my first managerial job, and I realized I had colleagues who didn't have a college degree. Yes, I made a little bit more money than them, $1 or two per hour, but that was inconsequential. And it's funny because eventually I found myself towards education, and at that point in time, having a bachelor's degree was very important. It was a requirement, and then I didn't think I was going to be doing this for the next 15 years, but became a teacher, and then eventually became an assistant principal and everything else, and that's all she wrote. And here I am right now, and that is by the grace of God. I have a lot of friends of mine who are not in that same position at all. That degree literally meant nothing for them economically. And that's a space where financial literacy would have been very important. And then I have to ask myself, why is this not taught? And not only did I ask myself, I had to do some research. Why is this not taught? And I realized, I didn't realize, I came across some things that was very, very interesting. That and this is just a portion of it, but this is a gentleman, John D. Rockefeller. Not Rockefeller Records with Jay-Z, but the original family, the Rockefellers, which were a very powerful, wealthy family based out of New York. And there's stories that I heard that and I had to look up, and I found some quotes, and I was like, whoa, is this real? Where it was lobbied. It was lobbied to remove financial literacy or anything having to do with teaching economic systems of America or how to start a business or anything like that from schools. And the quote that attributed to him is that, I want workers, not thinkers. I thought to myself, that's interesting. I want workers and not thinkers. And I was like, huh, what does that mean to want workers and not thinkers? And of course, the Rockefellers and all the other powerful families in this country in business, they're part of the industrial age and building factories and making sure that the American economic machine is moving forward. And these spaces needed workers. And if you need workers, they want people who are going to walk in and do what you tell them to do. Sit here, do this for 8 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours. But back then, they didn't even have an 8-hour workday. They didn't even have a 5-hour work week. You sit here and you do these things. You put part A to part B, or whatever it is you do in that factory space. And the eventual goal It was just for you to do your job so the families and the companies will make their money and they will pay you just enough to keep you there. They're not going to pay you enough to make you happy, but you're going to pay you enough to keep you knowing that I can lose this job. And if your education didn't give you enough information to say, maybe I can start my own, then you're trapped in that space. If the education didn't teach you, like, okay, maybe if I do these things with the little money I'm making, maybe I might be able to do X, Y, Z. You're not being taught that. You're just taught pay your rent, feed your family, and try to set some money aside, and let's see how far you can go. And that's still the case till this day. That's still the case to this day. Yesterday on the Breakfast Club, for those of you familiar with the Breakfast Club, that's with DJ Envy and Charlemagne and that crew. They had these brothers, Earn Your Leisure, and I'm a big fan. I watch a lot of their content, and they're focused on financial literacy. And the question was asked: what's the greatest myth, taught or told to Black people? I think that was the question that Charlemagne asked, and one of the brothers said, "We are taught that you have to work very hard to get any kind of economic success in America. You're taught money doesn't grow on trees. That you have to have 2 or 3 or 4, up to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 jobs. I know people who've had 4 jobs who are literally working their lives away. They said that you have to trade time for money, and said these are all lies that you're being told. And I thought that is interesting because where I sit right now, I know that's not the case. I know that if we're taught and our children are taught how the economic system works, then you realize that no, I'll say this again. I'm not saying that you don't work. I'm saying that it redefines what work is. And it's very true. Wall Street Bets showed us something. GameStop showed us something. But there are people out there who literally were taking their money to bet that a company would fail. And other people who took their money collectively and said, we're not going to let this company fail. As a matter of fact, we're going to flip this economic space so we make a profit from it. And my question was, how many of those people were working at GameStop? Like, how many of those people were actually at GameStop working? These were people on the sidelines who said, I'm just going to invest in this space. And again, short selling, all that stuff is complicated. And some of you might be like, okay, all right. For the sake of just showing you what a financial education literacy can mean, I'm going to share something with you real quick. Let me see if I can just bear with me. I just gotta. There we go. Let me see if I can add this to my screen. And you guys are going to see some movie magic here. Okay. For those of you who are like, what is happening right now? I am sharing with you my iPhone. I want to show you an article real quick because I would like to show you a video, but YouTube acts funny, and I do not want to have this my content suspended. So I want to share with you an article. So I know I can do that without issue. So this young man right here, and the first time I heard about him was on Earn Your Leisure. Here we go. His name is Christian Jones. He has a nickname, Christian the Truth Jones. And he's 13 years old, as you can see. He's a real kid, a real life kid, 13 years old. I don't know, he might, I think what I saw of him, he was still 13. I think he's about to be 14. So this kid right here, Christian Jones. So what did he do? So I'm sorry, I'm over here probably giving you guys a headache. He actually teaches people about how to trade stocks and stock options. 13 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so let me tell you a story. So he was a kid. He wanted something. I forget. I don't remember what the thing was. He wanted something, and his mom kind of like geared him towards like um, his mom kind of pushed him towards like getting it for yourself. And I'm sorry, I'm butchering the story right now, but I do know that at some point in time, he came across uh, stories that people were making money, a lot of money, off of sorry, um, off of buying stocks, and he was like, "How is it possible you can make all this money on this space?" And he was like, I think they said he was like 8 years old when he saw this, and he asked his mom, like, his mom thought, "Oh wow, he's really showing interest in this thing with money, and stocks." So she invested in a course to teach him about stocks, and he was 8 years old. And she was like, "Okay, there's some concepts in here he doesn't understand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with this, so that I can teach him, explain to him in a way he understands." So she takes the course, and then she and he, you know, kind of like she goes over with him, and then they are like, "Okay, let's see what we can do." So they start investing, and he starts trading options. And as you can see, what am I doing here? I keep touching the wrong thing. Um, he has made a lot of money buying stocks um, and as a matter of fact, his claim to fame is this: he made $78,000 off of Tesla. He bought Tesla stocks, and he did I believe I want to say he did a short sale. I might be wrong about that, but regardless, at 13 years old, he had a very clear understanding of how this works. He made an investment, and his investment ended up yielding $78,000 at 13. I know people who don't make $78,000 a year. The majority of America does not make above 75,000 a year, and that's fact. The majority of America does not make above 75,000 a year. He made that off of one trade. And this kid who is like any other kid, loves football, you know, um, you know, just kind of like, you know, learned and applied. And his mother is in there with him, and his family is supporting him. And all of a sudden now he has a skill that's probably going to take him a life, is going to really changes the direction of his life, or if it hasn't already done so. Again, someone might say, well, he's a genius. Maybe he's just a savant. But then I think about when I was 13. What was I doing when I was 13? I was in the 10th grade. Yeah, I was in 10th grade, Inglewood High School. And I remember in the 10th grade, we had to take driver's ed. I don't know why in New York State that's not a thing. I mean, it's not in New York City, but in California, we had to take driver's ed. And I was being taught how to eventually drive a car. Okay. To me, this thing was just like, the whole concept of driving a car was just like, nah, son, yo, I'm not trying to kill nobody. I'm not trying to kill myself. It looks so complicated. Which pedals to push, the gears, the steering wheel, understanding relative speed and using my odometer, don't get pulled over, stop signs and lights and everything else and every car around me. I remember just being like, this is crazy. But I took that class. I was 13. And then I passed that class. And then eventually I got my learner's permit. And I went out there and I tried it. I wasn't very good at it at first, but eventually I got my license and I was driving. No one ever said, "Hey, he's a high school kid. He's not ready to drive a car yet." No, they said, "Let's make sure he has all the education he needs so that when the time comes, he will be positioned to be able to drive that car and drive that car safely." This child at 8 and 10 years old had his mother explain to him, "This is what we're going to do. I'm going to do it together. We're going to gamify this, and we're going to see how this works." And now he is an expert in this space. not because he's a genius, but because he found interest in it and he was taught how to do it and he was given opportunity to actually practice it. And now it's funny because during the episode of In Your Leisure, his definition of short selling was so much better than the adults. As a matter of fact, the adults had to kind of yield to him to explain a little bit better than they did. And I thought to myself, wow, from the mouth of babes, right? They say that in the Bible, from the mouth of babes. And it wasn't that. It was just that he was educated in that. He was far better educated in that than the adults in that space. Because it's something to be said about being taught something when you're young. And being and exercising that thing when there's no fear and it's all fueled by curiosity. Versus being an adult and now you're like trying to figure it out and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to mess up because I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to ruin my family. That is something that needs to be changed. I'm not sure if schools or the education system will ever change that. It came up today doing Wall Street, doing the hearings, doing some of the commentating. People are saying, how do we make sure people who lost money in the stock market doing over GameStop, it doesn't happen again? And one of the Congress people said to one of the witnesses, do you have a Series 7 license? Do you have all the license to be a broker? And he was like, yes. So how do you think it's fair that people who don't have the same licenses are buying stock and losing their livelihood because they're not educated in it? And it's funny because in my brain I thought to myself, if they were taught this, just like driving, just like calculus or math or whatever the case is, then at least, maybe they might not be licensed, at least they'll have the understanding of the system so they don't get played, you know. And like I was saying, I don't know if this is what ever happened in schools. It is something that we need to start pushing. That's why, my financial literacy content that I create in the space is called Financial Literacy Matters, because I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Black Lives Matter, but I also think that beyond protecting ourselves, our physical spaces in our lives, we also need to start to protect our financial lives as well, because there's a reason that Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street was burnt down. Because not only do we need to control their bodies, we definitely have to control their economic lives as well. Because if economically people are unstable, then controlling their bodies and their minds is easy. Because when somebody's hungry, they got to come back to us to eat. And that's what we've been doing. We've been waiting for master to feed us. But the reality is, if we know how, it's weird. I'm messing this up right now because I feel like I should have talked about learning how to fish and showing a man how to fish and he eats for a lifetime. But that's what it is. So, but yeah, that's the space that for those of you who came in later, I said all this to say that that's the direction I'm going with my content, with this channel, is economic literacy, it is financial literacy across the board. Because at the end of the day, to have another generation, and I'll tell you this, I look at my children, my daughter who's 2, my son who's 11 months, who's about to be a year, literally in a week or in March 3rd, he's going to be a year. He was a pandemic baby. He was literally born during the pandemic and has had his first year of life in this space that we're in. If they reach 18 and have no understanding and don't have the language and cannot articulate where they fit in this economic space that we all exist in right now, then I've not done my job. If they go to college and walk out with debt, I've not done my job. If they don't have a stock portfolio at 18, I've not done my job. If they can't tell the difference between term life and whole life insurance, I've not done my job. Because if they can tell me what the Pythagorean theorem is, then they should be able to tell me what whole life insurance is. And these are the things that we need to start thinking about. You know, how are we making sure that we're not only educating ourselves and playing catch up, but also we're making sure that our children, our nieces and nephews, and the next generation are not playing catch up. You want to see us gain political power in this country and political equity in this country? Educate our children financially. Help them understand. Because at the end of the day, America is the greatest country in the world. Yes, we have democracy. Yes, there's opportunity. But the thing that makes the country the greatest in the world is nothing more so than financial power. Think about all the greatest nations that have ever existed. They're also the richest nations. Go back to Israel. Go back to King David, richest. His son ended up being the richest, one of the richest men who ever lived, and wisest as well. Great Britain when they run the seas. Okay, Roman Empire. Okay, the Chinese, the Ming dynasties. All these spaces we see them. The Zulus. Mansa Musa, and now that he's getting props for being arguably the richest man who ever lived, who was from Mali in Africa. Okay, all these empires, all these names have one thing in common: financial strength. And financial strength starts with financial literacy, understanding how the financial systems work. That has to be the key educational indicator that exists amongst all of our children. So yeah, I'm sometimes I feel like I'm like John the Baptist in the wilderness, screaming like, he's coming, like the second coming. He's coming. He's going to be here soon. And the reality, what I'm screaming is financial literacy. We need that now. Okay, we need that now. So whether our schools are going to do it or we do it ourselves, but it's something that is necessary. And I can tell you this: in my school, and I'm going to be ending this shortly, but in my school, I'm a principal of John Jay School for Law in Parkland, Brooklyn. Financial literacy is going to be a mandatory course all 4 years. It might be a one semester course, but it's going to be every year. My students are going to take a financial literacy course, and they're going to learn all the things they need to know so that when they graduate, they will be wise when it comes to their finances. At the end of the day, what they choose to do with that knowledge is up to them, but at least they should need to have a choice. And but that's something that I can make happen in my school. It's something I can build into my school, programming wise, and moving resources in that direction. However, every school has its own priorities, and I think I beg you, if you're a parent, if you're a concerned community member, talk to your school principal, talk to your teachers, talk to your political figures in your community, and figure out, like, how do we get this? How do we make sure that this exists? And some of you might face a lot of pushback, and just know why the pushback is there, because that's not intended to be taught in schools, which blows my mind. But in the meantime, I hope to come to you guys with more information on how we can alleviate this issue, create spaces for financial literacy to exist for our young people. It's important. It's important. And if it wasn't important, you wouldn't be watching this video. If it wasn't important, you wouldn't be sitting for an hour plus to hear what I have to say. And I hope that I was clear in my messaging. But it is past an hour. I always try to keep this under an hour. This time I'm almost an hour and 15 minutes. I want to say I appreciate you all for being here. I want to give a quick shout out to my brother Nova. Good to see you, man. Credit Solutionists. Listen, I was flowing, but I was posting your comments on the screen, and I agree with you 100%. Um, and you stated 100% of your clients have student loan debt. Um, and it's funny, like I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read what you said, and this is so true. 100% of my clients have student loan debt, and their income after graduation doesn't justify the cost of the loan they took out. Crazy, and that was the space I lived in. This is the state I lived in. It wasn't until I became a system principal that I was like, okay, this is all making sense now. And it's still a big chunk of my income. You know, um, uh, my brother, Credit Jams. Hope please be safe on the road out there. I know the weather is crazy, and and I know that I don't know where you're driving through right now. Just be safe out there, man. And and I appreciate you listening in. See here, and then he also said, see here. Most schools only taught us how to keep the rich richer. Taught us nothing about credit. Exactly. They taught us. They teach nothing about credit. They teach nothing about personal finance. Nothing about budgeting. You know, um, like not just budgeting. Like, hey, save money, but how do you budget? What is the 50-30-20 principle? How do I separate my needs versus my wants versus saving and investment? Like things like that are very simple that what you hear sticks with you. Reading books like The Richest Man in Babylon, reading books like, A Rich Dad Poor Dad. Even Dave Ramsey, who I don't always agree with his. Listen, I barely agree with his politics, but his economic wisdom, it's sound. And there's so many spaces like that where people are saying things that are just like sound financial principle, but we don't teach this in schools. We wait till somebody has messed up and they're jacked up and the sky's falling before we even engage them in educating them on how to fix the problem. I was saying to my friend of mine earlier today, we were talking about Dave Ramsey, and he said, I said to him, Dave Ramsey he's a doctor. You know what he does? He gives you medicine. He gives you medicine, and you keep taking that medicine. But the cure itself, there is no cure. But what you need the the the, the education, the health education, the how to keep yourself healthy. And that's the thing right now. Financial literacy is going to be the how do I not get myself into that space ever. And if I do find myself in that space, I know how to get myself out of it. You know. So okay, I'm done talking. I'm starting to ramble. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Credit Solutionists. Thank you, Credit Jams. I appreciate you all who are listening. Those of you who there's a bunch of you I could see we listened the whole entire time. Even though you didn't participate in the comments and reactions, listen, I get it. Just hopefully the seeds I planted tonight, it gets you thinking. And definitely like, share, um, um, do whatever you can do to help this channel grow. Let's make people know about what we're doing here, because this is important work, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here this evening. All right, y'all. Be well. Good night, and I'll see you guys next week. All right. Peace.